Hi Roselle. All right, so I've had a chance to play around with these just a little bit more, and so to add on to what I said in my previous email earlier today, let's take a look at these three functions. And it looks to me like he's just trying to get you, practice with using Maple. And you have to be really careful, like we said before, to type these in so that it understands what you're asking it to do, and use lots of brackets and stuff where you think it may not see the bedmess part of it, or it may not see, all what is squared and things like that. So you have to tell it. So starting with x squared plus y squared equals 1. That follows the general equation of a circle, x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So this is our unit circle with radius 1. And because he has restricted the domain for y greater than or equal to 0, basically it takes out this bottom half of the circle, and so you only have the semicircle above the x-axis to work with for this one. And so when you're working with Maple, I think there is a way for you to restrict the range to y is greater than or equal to 0. Sorry, my cookies just came out of the oven, so I had to run and get them and put you on pause. So basically, there is a way, I think, for you to type this into Maple, and it will ask you over what range or over what domain, and it wants, according to this assignment, for you to put range y is greater than or equal to 0, which will mean that then you're also restricting the domain to be Lx greater than minus 1 and less than 1. And another way to write that is in interval notation. I think I used that in my email because it was easier to write. And that just means all values from minus 1 to 1, including minus 1 and 1. So for the first graph, I used Desmos on the computer just to generate the graph to show you what it should look like. But when you type it into Maple, I think all he's asking you to do is get just the top half of this graph, get Maple to give you that, okay? So let me switch pictures and move on to the next one. Now I told you it was a hyperbola, but I couldn't see the right-hand side. And when you emailed me and told me what the right-hand side was and that it was 0, then it actually produces this graph here. And this graph, excuse me, this graph here is not a hyperbola because of the 0. If it was any other number, like if it was y squared minus x squared equals 1, or y squared minus x squared equals 4, or something like that, it would be a hyperbola, which would have like this kind of C shape here and here in between these lines, and these lines would be asymptotes. But this is a special case because you're defining the equation as y squared minus x squared equals 0. And it actually ends up just giving you lines in this case. So this is basically the line y equals x, and this is the line y equals minus x, and this function is the intersection of those two lines. Now, he is asking you to graph this between x equals minus 1 and x equals 1. So he's restricted the domain there. So minus 1 would be here, positive 1 would be here, and again, you're going to tell Maple that you only want to graph it in between those two values. And so that's going to create sort of just this boxed off area right there where we would only have the y value, sorry I missed there a bit, we would only have the y value that goes with x equals minus 1 and x equals 1. Those would be our maximum y values, and then we would have minimum y values at those same x values down at the bottom there. So this is not actually a function because it doesn't pass the vertical line test. I don't think that's important to what you're doing here. I don't even know why I said that, to be honest. It just made me think of it because we have two y values for each x value here. So moving on to the third graph, that one is weird And again, I think all he's doing now is testing whether or not you're able to correctly type these into Maple. So hopefully at least knowing what you're supposed to get when you do that will be helpful to you. And this time he has not restricted the domain or the range, so he's just asking you to correctly type the function into Maple and get Maple to correctly generate the graph of this function. And this is kind of pretty, but this is what you should get when you graph it. And it's kind of a neat one with a horizontal asymptote in there across on the x-axis. But again, I think it really is just an exercise in typing it into Maple and making sure that you're making Maple understand the function that you're telling it to graph. And if you do that correctly, then you should end up with a graph that looks like that, okay? So I'll keep checking my emails. I'm in Richmond Hill tomorrow with the archery team, but there is Wi-Fi in the arena that we're going to be competing in, and so I'll check my emails a couple times tomorrow. And I'll try to remember to bring my iPad as well, and hopefully answer any more questions that you might come across if you have them tomorrow. And I'll just keep checking. I would imagine this one is due next week for you, this assignment. And I'll just keep checking and we can work together on it.